So, Amy, you've been coming to camp for many years, very active at camp in many ways. But what's kind of your first camp memory? What's your early camp memories?
I started as a third grader the summer after I finished third grade. And I remember the family groups and meeting a group of kids that we then moved through all of our elementary and then junior high and high school years together and are still lifelong friends together.
Cool.
Yeah, it was a great experience of a sense of belonging. And you're out of your usual comfort zone of life, and we all bring our stuff, but we get to accept each other. We get to make friends. We get to work together. But one of the things that I loved the most, maybe not the most, but one of the things that I loved was washing dishes in the Sarah Major basement. So the old way of the 3 basins, and everyone had to take their turn, and we learned to set the table, and there was something about the practicality that would just made it as fun as swimming.
Yeah. So do you remember, were you staying in Sarah Major as well, or were you in one of the cabins back then?
In the cabins.
Cool.
Yeah, I don't think I ever stayed in any of the lodges. So the cabins.
So enjoyed. Yeah, because Sarah Major's basement was the dining hall
Right.
back in those days. So,
Right.
Cool. So what were some of your other fun things that you really looked forward to at camp?
I grew up on a farm, and so being out of doors was pretty normal for me. But I loved the swimming. I loved the crafts, and the campfires. Those were the best. I think that's probably a very common memory for folks. But sitting around the campfire, watching the sparks rise up into the air, and having that very, very intentional and close sense of God.
Yeah. So where in Indiana did you grow up?
10 miles north of Camp Mack.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. So it was not just for you, it was part of your family as well.
It was. My mom first came to Camp Mack when she was in college, so in the 1950s.
Wow.
And when it was time for me to come to camp, it was never an option whether I would go or not. My option was which week I wanted to go. And that served me very well. It was just an assumption. And so with my mom's support and encouragement, I was a camper. I was on youth camp council. I then spent 4 years on summer staff.
Okay.
I was a counselor a couple of times. And so my love for Camp Mack is just long and deep from many different points of view.
Yeah. When you were on summer staff, was your favorite thing still doing dishes, or were there other parts of summer staff that you really liked?
I worked in the kitchen.
Okay.
And I loved starting the day making the coffee for the staff.
Yeah.
That sense of the brewing and the aroma and knowing that it was ready when the staff was ready to have breakfast and get their day started. But there was one summer that I was known as the potting monster because no one liked washing the pots and pans. And so this was my second summer, and I decided that was going to be my thing. And I wore big green gloves all the way up to here. And I had just learned about the monk, Brother Lawrence, who worked in a kitchen silently, and that was his devotion. And so there, bent over the sink, in no air conditioning in the kitchen in those days, I washed the pots and pans, singing hymns and praying. And it was a remarkable summer for me in just that pragmatic action of washing dishes.
I've heard stories of that hot chocolate was a camp tradition back in the day. Does that ring any bells to you?
Oh, I'm sure we had hot chocolate, and probably in those big vats where it was dipped out.
Nice. So summer staff, you said you counseled a few times. Was counseling something you enjoyed, or something that you just somebody had to counsel?
the opportunities I had to counsel came while I was on summer staff.
Okay.
And there were people who were willing to come and volunteer a week in the kitchen, but they were uncomfortable counseling. So I would leave the kitchen duties and I would go out and be a counselor.
Nice.
It wasn't my favorite thing,
Yeah.
but I did enjoy doing it a couple of times.
What ages did you usually counsel? Just
The younger kids.
okay.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
So, with being summer staff, I know that's something that you passed on to your son Turner.
Yes.
Was Bennett on staff as well?
Yes, Turner did 2 summers and Bennett did 1 summer.
Okay.
And they also went to camp as soon as they could
Yeah.
and went all the way through youth camp.
So, what was it like being able to experience Camp Mack then as a parent of dropping the kids off and leaving rather than getting to stay?
Yeah, it was great. I knew the kind of week they were going to have. I knew that it was going to be fun and impactful and they would have friends. And so it was just a great feeling to drop them off at camp.
Cool. How long now have you been at Manchester Church of the Brethren?
I've been at the Manchester Church of the Brethren for 2.5 years.
Cool.
Yeah.
So now Manchester usually comes here once a summer for worship, most years. I know
Yes.
COVID's thrown everything off, but talk about why that's important, you think, for the church to come and for people to come here for Sunday morning worship.
When we come and sit on Wedding Hill for worship and we have the lake in front of us and we're in our lawn chairs, and some people prefer to sit on those wooden benches.
Mm-hmm.
We are in nature. It is a different environment, and you just feel it. You just feel the presence of God in a different way. We have coupled that time for worship with baptism down in the lake, and it's just incredibly meaningful.
Yeah, I know a number of churches, and every church has their spot, and yours is always Wedding Hill, some on Vesper.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, with all the places, you've been able to see camp so many different ways over so many years. Do you have a favorite place here at camp?
Well, in my memory, I would say the Becker Lodge porch is a favorite. There is so much that the smells, the sounds, everything comes to mind. And I know that things changed. And Turner, my son, was actually on summer staff when Becker burned, and that was tragic. But camp has continued to move forward and to grow and to become. But any place that's close to the lake, the little chapel is meaningful. The auditorium, all of it. When you drive in the drive, it's like all of the experiences come flooding back, and sometimes I'm just little Amy again, coming for my week of Camp Mack.
Cool. One thing that you've done in the past year is you led a adult spiritual retreat here. I know we didn't have a giant crowd for you one of these times, though. But with that retreat, why do you think it's important for adults to come back to Camp Mack as well?
It's vitally important for adults to come back to Camp Mack for a weekend or for a spirituality retreat or any kind of bird watching experience, because we are all still in our faith formation. The culture changes around us and new questions come up for us to engage with. It's also an opportunity to just get away, to step out of our norm, and we come back to our faith in a new way. It's a refreshing kind of experience.
Cool. So, with all the experiences you've had here at camp, do you feel like there's something that you've been able to experience that you wish more people had? Kind of a hidden gem of Camp Mack?
A hidden gem of Camp Mack that I would like other people to experience is the belonging. And so I think about children who don't belong, are bullied or on the outside of friend groups. You come to Camp Mack and you're in a family group. Your counselors are not your parents, but they love you and they guide you through the week. But there is that sense of belonging and unconditional love.
Awesome. You've recently started on the master plan committee. and it hasn't been approved yet, so we won't go into detail of all the cool stuff that you all are talking about, but someday. But how has that been able to be a part of that group? How has that maybe changed your knowledge of Camp Mack or affirmed your own experiences?
Being on the master plan committee has been quite an experience. I am so impressed by the staff and their vision, their practicality, being guided by a sense of mission and purpose as we think about lodging and sewer systems and tree renovations, not renovations, but growing our trees as they age. All of the things the staff is so aware of, and it's impressive to think about what we can do in the future to keep Camp Mack going.
Yeah, well, and I'll say from a staff side, we appreciate that you don't have any crazy ideas. There's nothing, as we've heard some of the goals that we as a staff are like, oh, they want to do that?
Well,
So,
I seriously, passing that back to you as
Yeah.
the staff, it's because when you all have presented to us, it has been like, wow, these are great ideas.
Yeah.
Let's do them all.
yeah, it's fun. It's a fun time. So with that, what excites you the most about the future of Camp Mack?
I think that Camp Mack has the potential of always being here, reaching more children beyond just the Church of the Brethren, but children who come in with school groups who aren't going to church. And this might be their only access to a Christian environment. And we don't proselytize, but we offer that welcome, that belonging, that sense of something more that is important to them and the creation all around them.
But do you have any other fun camp memories or experiences that really stick with you and that you'd like to tell that story?
I have very few distinct, other than the cinnamon toast and the crunch of the cinnamon toast and the slathering on of the butter once I knew how it was made. It's more at this point in my life just this beautiful gathering of feelings, of memories, of knowing how impacted I have been in my faith and as a person in the world by my weeks at Camp Mack.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing today, for your years of service on summer staff, for being a camper parent, and looking to the future with our master plan. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.